Dr. Stephen Shafer, the prosecution's star witness, about to be cross-examined by the defense. You don't want to miss that. That's coming up, 3:45 Eastern, 12:45 Pacific. Court taking the morning off. We're going to get you up to speed on everything going on in the Michael Jackson death trial. And at this point, obviously, it's advantage prosecution. They've presented their side of the case, wrapped up with a great final witness for them anyway, and Dr. Stephen Shafer. Want to bring in CNN producer Alan Duke, doing a great job covering this since day one. Also with us, criminal defense attorney John Manuelian, providing some expert insight here. So if you're putting Chernoff in, you want a game change. You want a momentum shift then, right?
Absolutely, and that's what's going on. Look, Chernoff is not happy with Flanagan's performance, and frankly, I'm not either. I don't think he got anywhere with Steinberg, and I think Chernoff thinks he could do a much better job. But again, this is a very difficult case. It's actually quite indefensible from my perspective. So at this point in time, Chernoff feels that he could do a better job. We'll have to wait and see, but I don't really think that Chernoff's going to make any headway here. What is he going to possibly ask Shafer that's going to discredit him? There's really nothing going to be asked. If I was Chernoff, like I said, I would duck my head, lay low, put on Paul White, and argue the case in front of the jury in closing.
Yeah, uphill battle regardless, Flanagan or Chernoff. Let's bring back our criminal defense attorney, John Manuelian. It's an uphill battle for the defense, isn't it, John?
Absolutely. Very, very tough case, but they got to keep going. And remember, Mike, it's now the defense's turn to go up at bat.
All right, John, we'll be talking again in just a little bit. And let's bring in our criminal defense attorney, John Manuelian. Hey, John, before we get into specifics about attack points or potential ones for Stephen Shafer, what's going on with that defense team right now as they prepare for cross and they prepare to take over and present their side of the story?
I think the defense knows it's the bottom of the ninth inning and they've got to win this case right now. They've got to put some damage because the prosecution has just been steamrolling Dr. Murray's defense with a plethora or a mountain of evidence. So, you know, I think Chernoff is going to want to go for the knockout punch. But again, I don't think that's the right way to go. You don't go toe-to-toe with a guy that's written thousands of articles on the subject, a guy that seems very logical, a guy that's presented a whole amount of visual effects and presentation for the jury. I think the better way to duck this, but I think Chernoff wants to go toe-to-toe with the guy so that the prosecution's last witness ends off on a flat note.
Got it. That's going to be so difficult, though. And you laid out a theory that's really interesting, that potentially you don't even question him. You just get him out of there. You know, you take your lumps, he's done his damage, and you get your expert out there to tell your side. Not likely, though, right, John?
I don't think so because, you know, Chernoff knows there's a lot of pressure. If they lose, Chernoff knows that's going to be very critical, the fact that he didn't ask one question. It may be on appeal. But again, you have to have a lot of discipline as a criminal defense attorney. You got to be confident. And it's okay not to ask questions, especially when you know that expert is going to hurt your case. So it's just a matter of style. Maybe that's not Chernoff's style. It certainly is mine, and that's the way I would go about it.
Yeah, really interesting, because let's face it, these experts, the final three experts for the prosecutors, have done damage. Dr. Alain Steinberg, Dr. Kamengar, and now Dr. Stephen Shafer. Hey, let's go over a couple of the theories here. And from the defense I'm talking about. Their theory is that Michael Jackson downed 8 tablets of lorazepam and then self-injected propofol. Well, let's listen. And here's Dr. Stephen Shafer about that self-injection or self-administration of propofol. He says, no way. Let's listen to that, John. We'll get your take coming out.
People just don't wake up from anesthesia like that. People just don't wake up, you know, hell-bent to grab the next dose in a syringe, draw it up and shove it in their IV again. I mean, that just, it's a crazy scenario. I've never seen anything that just doesn't happen.
Using the term crazy scenario. And that is, again, that's simple stuff for a jury as they try and compare the theories that they're hearing. I mean, would Michael Jackson really have had the wherewithal to wake up from the 25 milligrams that Conrad Murray says he gave him, and he wakes up and he's drawn out the vials of propofol and self-administering? But do you still go there if you're the defense? I mean, do you still try and pound home that theory, John?
Defense, I don't think the jury's going to buy it. You know, the fact that Michael Jackson supposedly played possum while Murray left and then he wakes up to inject himself is ridiculous. Number one, because Michael Jackson didn't have a lot of veins to stick his the needle inside, number one. Number two, he probably was sedated, so he probably couldn't do it. It doesn't present any logical conclusions. And who's going to explain that? You can't have Paul White explain that because he wasn't in the room. He has no idea what Michael Jackson did. Murray's not in the room because, unfortunately, Chernoff made Murray give a statement to the police, so you know Murray locked himself in. That's why you don't have a lot of wiggle room in this case. So I really don't know what Chernoff's going to get out on the cross.
God, that's a great point. And Dr. Stephen Shafer even dealt with the lorazepam. It was a lot, most of it, what his testimony dealt with propofol, but he did deal with lorazepam. At the end of the day, he said what he saw or he tested in the stomach contents of Michael Jackson, about 1/43 of a tablet. Let's listen to that, and we'll get your take, John.
So you're saying, so actually visually...
Visually, that's correct.
This literally is 1/43 of a tablet?
Correct.
And that's what was found in the stomach?
Correct.
Okay. Now, this slide summarizes your conclusions that the finding of lorazepam glucuronide in the stomach is expected?
Absolutely.
And when he mentioned that glucuronide, that's a metabolite, it was kind of confusing to listen to, but at the end of the day, he's saying that the testing done by the defense was faulty that gave them that high level of lorazepam in Michael Jackson's stomach. Do you think that is still something you got to explore as a defense team? Because you laid that one out there in opening very specifically, the 8 tablets.
Not only the 8 tablets, but they're also saying that the the amount that was injected into the amount that of lorazepam that was in the system did not actually contribute to the death of Michael Jackson. The contribution of death to Michael Jackson was the acute propofol intoxication. So they've got to rule that out. Remember, this is the battle of the experts. They need Paul White to go in there and definitively say that it wasn't acute propofol intoxication, it was a lorazepam. But Dr. Shafer has already discounted that, called it crazy, called it ridiculous. He used the word disappointed. So I don't know how Dr. White's going to be able to redeem himself, but I think Ed Chernoff thinks by getting up there and doing the cross himself, he's going to do some damage to him, allowing the door, paving the way for Dr. White's testimony.
Last one real quick. We've talked about it and so many others have. Causation. Did the prosecution give the jury cause of death? This theory, do you think they're believing Dr. Shafer at this point that Murray gave him the propofol, IV drip, left the room?
I do, and I'll tell you why, because Alon Steinberg also said that without a doubt it was an IV drip that was used during Michael Jackson's sedation process, and the levels of propofol in the system corroborate that. Dr. Shafer said the same thing, and to talk about whether it's a substantial cause of Michael Jackson's death, not only did Dr. Shafer say it was a substantial cause, he said it was a direct cause. So Walgren not only took the burden, he met the burden and went above and beyond the burden and said he directly caused, either by abandoning him, which Michael Jackson could have taken the drug, so that's not a defense, or by giving him the IV drip. I mean, they're cornered, Mike. This is a checkmate. I don't know how Chernoff's going to be able to get out of it.
You know, and that comes from you, John. You've done a very good job through this trial as we work together to point out flaws, openings for the defense, and you at this point are seeing, wow, that they could be cornered at this point. All right, we'll talk again a little bit more again. When Stephen Shafer was using an IV stand and the way he was again dealing with the evidence, this upset Conrad Murray. And Murray, reportedly, again from E! whispers to Dr. Paul White, can you believe that? So interesting stuff. Let's bring in our criminal defense attorney, John Manuelian. I think, John, again, this is from E! We heard from our colleague Alan Duke as well. But what it's telling us is there's some emotion here from Dr. Paul White. You're a criminal defense attorney. Is that good or bad that Paul White's getting emotional and somewhat taking things personally?
No, not good at all. It might throw his game off. That's why Ed Chernoff needs to sit down with him and tell him not to take it personally, like Alan Duke said. And as far as the gag order is concerned, I don't know whether or not that would be a violation of the gag order unless there was intentional publication. It sounds to me, based on what your producers are saying, that this was a communication that happened on the 12th floor, and there's something called work product privilege. What that means is the defendant and his defense attorneys could speak to each other about their thoughts and obviously preparation of the trial. But if Paul White did this intentionally so that he could leak it to the media, it may be problematic.
Got it. Interesting stuff here. Well, let's listen again, John, to what Paul White may be taking offense to. And I believe this is where that in the trial, Dr. Stephen Shafer is being asked about the possibility that Michael Jackson drank propofol. And here's Dr. Stephen Shafer's response to that, and also, well, bottom line, a criticism of his friend Paul White. Here we go.